starting the Building Healthy Eating Habits and Food Literacy Skills with the Health and Physical Education Curriculum webinar. We are going to get started. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Haefele, and I am a Health and Physical Education Curriculum Consultant with OPHEA. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. We will get started with OPHEA's land acknowledgement. Our collective work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories all across Ontario. We are grateful to be able to work locally on these territories. As we move forward in these uncertain times, we acknowledge the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land, including lessons they may have for us on the value of community, resiliency, cooperation, and determination. OPHEA works across Ontario's education system in classrooms, in schools, and in school boards, working directly with educators, principals, school board leaders, public health professionals, and provincial stakeholders to bridge policy and practice, often in partnership, as we're doing today with the Elderly Foundation, whose support has made today's session possible. The Elderly Foundation is Canada's leading foundation exclusively dedicated to enhancing food literacy. The foundation envisions a society of better informed young children and their families consuming healthier foods and beverages. Let's go over some of the housekeeping items for today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded and a recap blog will be developed to summarize discussions from today, and both of these will be provided to all registrants. All participants are in listen-only mode, and we will be using the Q&A feature. So if you take a look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A button for you. When you want to ask a question to our panelists, please use this feature to type in your question. You can also choose to ask your question anonymously, and within this mode, only our team will be able to view the questions. We invite you to move around throughout the webinar as we connect and learn together. This session will focus on increasing understanding about food literacy skill development, health and physical education curricula, including the integration of social emotional learning skills and living skills, and healthy eating habits. We will also explore teaching strategies, provide resources and supports that educators are using to help make real-life connections to students' learning. Today, we have a panel of practicing educators where we will get to see examples of activities, supports, and lesson plans they use to support their students' learning. Andrea Barrow, you want to wave your hand? Andrea Barrow is a health and physical education teacher with the Limestone District School Board in Kingston. She's an OPHEA ambassador and a member of the Ontario Physical Activity Safety Standards and Education Committee. Andrea is a certified fitness instructor, personal trainer, nutrition and wellness specialist, and yoga teacher. She shares her passion for fitness at school and within her community through involvement in fitness programs and coaching. Robin, wave your hand. Welcome. Robin MacDonald is a health and physical education teacher and also a special education specialist in the Near North District School Board and an OPHEA ambassador. She has spent her career supporting students in Northern Ontario and has particular interest in supporting First Nation, remote, and rural communities. She has a particular passion for supporting healthy school communities and loves to share her knowledge around school nutrition and well-being. She uses she and her pronouns and asks others to use these pronouns in reference to her. Shaun, wave your hand. My last colleague that I'm introducing today, Shaun Vaillancourt, is a healthy, active living school lead and French immersion specialist teacher with Trillium Lakelands District School Board and an OPHEA ambassador. He has spent his career prioritizing well-being as a vehicle to drive student achievement. He is also a mentor coach with Huntsville Minor Hockey and loves to collaborate with the community to improve youth nutrition and well-being. He uses he and him pronouns and asks others to use these pronouns in reference to him. I will be the moderator for this session. I am currently seconded as a curriculum consultant at OPHEA. I have been part of many regional and provincial initiatives that support the health and physical education curriculum, healthy schools, and also daily physical activity. I use she, her pronouns and ask others to use these pronouns in reference to me. So, as we are about to start our session, we welcome you to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions you have. We will try our best to get to everyone's questions. However, we only have a limited of time. Don't forget, we will be providing a summary blog recap on this webinar along with the recording in mid-June. Okay. Before we get started, I will be sharing my screen before we jump right into the themes that we have for us today. We're going to get started with the term food literacy, okay? Food literacy we'll be touching right away, but I have this video that I wanted to share that will set the stage for what we will start discussing, okay? Okay, so let me just share my screen. Thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, so this video is from the Elderly Foundation, and it's a very short video that sets the stage of what we will be talking about in regards to food literacy skills. So I'm just going to press play here. Take a moment just to pay attention to the key components of what food literacy is.
Food literacy. Hi, my name is John, and this is Helen and Amy. We're here to teach you about food literacy.
Let's learn now.
A poor diet contributes to poor health.
But better food literacy can help you, your children, and your family be healthier.
Let's learn about 5 ways you can think about food literacy.
What is food literacy? The first category is knowing about food. For example, what ingredients are in food or where food comes from. It also includes knowing about nutrition, like what nutrients are in food and how food affects your health. And knowing the language, like knowing words used to describe food, for example, low sodium or high fiber. The second category is having food skills. Can you chop food, measure ingredients, use a recipe, handle food safely? The third category is feeling confident when choosing, preparing, and eating food. So having key skills like being able to read and use a food label and being able to know what's true or false. Confidence to believe that you can choose and buy food that is healthier on a regular basis. Also, to believe that you are able to cook tasty meals using food and tools you have. Feeling confident is also about your food attitude and having a good relationship with food, like enjoying food and eating with others. The next category is about the outside things that may improve food literacy, like the food system. This is how we grow, process, transport, sell, and eat food, as well as remove its waste. And our living situation, having enough money and a place to cook and learn about food. And don't forget culture and traditions, as they influence what and how you choose to eat. Lastly, we have your food decisions. This is how you apply your knowledge and your skills to make healthier food choices most of the time.
Food literacy and you means better health.
So there you have it. Did anything surprise you? What do you think about your food literacy?
To learn more, visit our website at foodliteracy.ca or check us out on Twitter or like us on Facebook. Thanks for stopping by.
Before I jump into the next slide, I think it's really important to note that healthy eating is more than just the what our students are eating. And I really like this short video because it recognizes that all these 5 components that it touched on are interconnected, and it really helps students to make those healthier food choices that they can in the environment they are in, and really just empowers students to have the ability to understand the information that's given to them and to be able to make those food choices that they are able to, okay? This slide that I put up right now is a chart that was from the Ontario Dietitians of Public Health. My colleague's going to share the link that we got this from into the chat box. This link was provided in our first webinar called Ask a Dietitian, Explore Nutrition Facts and the Health and Physical Education Curriculum webinar. The reason why we're showing this chart is because it is a really good reminder for us as educators on how we can support inclusive and also safe learning environments when we teach about food, activity, and also health. So I'm going to share the mic with my first colleague, Robin MacDonald. Robin is from the elementary panel. And Robin, I was wondering if you can speak from your elementary perspective in regards to food literacy and how it is unique to your classroom and your school environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrea. I think first and foremost, it's important that especially in the elementary sector, particularly the primary stream, we really work at maintaining food neutral classrooms. And the reason I say this is because regardless of our own behaviors and being mindful of those, and even knowing that some of our really early learning students do pack their own lunches, I think the reality is our kindergarten students, our grade 1s and 2s, they're not buying the groceries. And so I think it's really important that when we're talking about food literacy and being mindful of other people's sort of realities and practices, that we don't use language that promotes diet culture. So I try not to label foods. I don't use language like healthy and not healthy, or go foods and whoa foods, or anything like that. We try and just explore food. I think it's important to acknowledge that when we focus on words that bring us back towards sort of a diet culture or diet culture promotion, there's a lot of stigma and there's a lot of shame. And the reality for some students is that they're not living in a house where food is secure, or they're part of traditions or cultural practices that are not the same as what I might know. I'm going to also ask Andrea, if you could just highlight this next piece here for me. Thank you. Our mindset too around food is important. And so rather than thinking about healthy and unhealthy, I really try and focus in that early stage of education, or much more so around, what's locally produced? What are some cultural foods that your family might appreciate? Think about the time of year. Think about what's also available with school food programming. So for example, whether you've got a garden and you can grow food, whether you have a breakfast program, or you're part of a Northern Fruit and Vegetable program where students can have access to exploring food in a way that makes them interested. All at the same time being really conscious of modeling behaviors and thinking about what you're eating and how you're eating, and just respect for the fact that, not everybody in an elementary stream is living the same reality as I am. And so I want to be respectful of that. But Andrea, Barrow, what's it like at the secondary level?
So it is a little bit different. There's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences at the secondary level, more so specifically having to do with our curriculum. In the grade 9 to 12 health and PE curriculum, we have what we call living skills. And the living skill expectations help students identify learning that helps students develop a positive sense of self, develop and maintain healthy relationships, and use critical and creative thinking processes as they set goals and make decisions to solve problems. So we have to remember, just like Robin said, that we are role models. They're watching what we eat in the classroom, and it's okay for them to see us eating something different and something that, that is not as nutrient dense, right? We're trying to use the language that doesn't shame them in terms, or shame ourselves, and that if we're eating something that's maybe considered a treat, that we're not making a big deal about the fact that we're cheating or eating something unhealthy, right? It's okay for them to see that we're eating something less nutrient dense because we have balance within what we're eating as well. So in terms of being careful not to comment about what they're eating, we have to be also mindful and not comment necessarily on what we're eating as well. In terms of the living skills, we want them to think of food as fuel. So they're fueling their body, they're fueling their mind, but we also want them to think as food not only as fuel, but also for enjoyment and how it connects to that enjoyment piece as well. So I'm going to throw it to Shaun in terms of the social emotional learning in elementary.
Great. Thank you. So whenever I think about social emotional learning, I think about equipping our learners with the tools needed to ensure positive student outcomes that are important for success in school and in life. We can connect SEL and food literacy by empowering our students to make informed, healthy decisions about food. The Ontario Dietitians of Public Health have identified interconnected attributes that make up the foundation for food literacy. So when I think of identifying, managing emotions, managing stress and coping skills, I think about mindful eating cues. I think about talking to our students about coming to the table with an appetite, listening to your physical hunger cues, and eating only until you're full, and be sure to engage all five senses with your meal. When I think about positive motivation and perseverance and healthy relationships, I think about food attitude. I want my students to instill the desire to learn how to prepare food, develop healthy relationships towards food, have respect for food traditions and culture, and prepare and appreciate the food you eat together with others. We could foster self-awareness and sense of identity by developing food skills and cooking self-efficiency. Being able to prepare meals throughout a lifespan using basic skills like chopping, measuring, cooking, reading recipes, and food safety will help build confidence in our students and one's ability to use cooking techniques and prepare tasty meals with the available food. We could also support critical and creative thinking by fostering nutrition literacy, which is equipping our students to be able to distinguish between credible and false nutrition information, as well as knowing how to find reliable nutrition information and how to make sense of it all. Marketing especially, I especially in the elementary panel will talk about the cereal aisle and the fact that the sugary cereals or maybe the unhealthier options are all at an arm's reach of a child who is sitting in a grocery cart. So with that being said, I'm going to throw it back to Andrea.
Thank you, Shaun. So sorry. I just realized that when I put myself on mute while the video was playing the video, you were not able to hear the video either. I'm going to quickly, because we do have a few minutes, just to review what the video was about. Yes, it was about food literacy, and you heard from my colleagues, Robin, Andrea, Barrow, and also Shaun, that they were able to share examples from their elementary, secondary, and also their school level in terms of how they bring food literacy to life, right? So it's really important to know that the food literacy, what it is that the components of food literacy, knowing about your food and your nutrition, having the food skills, the feeling of being, the confidence of choosing what foods you need to have in order to have that healthier choice and making those healthier decisions, they're all interconnected. And it's really nice to hear from my colleagues to really hear that how I act, how I behave, how I role model, whether I'm at the elementary or secondary level, it really does impact in terms of what the students are understanding from the curriculum. Okay. Once again, feel free to jump into the Q&A box if you have any questions regarding this theme that we're talking about. We'll try our best to answer all the questions. But nevertheless, I'm going to jump into the second theme, which will be very interesting in regards to teaching strategies, resources, and supports. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen first. Okay. So yes, the second theme really hones in on two fundamental principles in the health and physical education curriculum. So the first fundamental principle talks about emotional and physical safety. And it actually reminds me of what Robin was talking about in terms of our language when we were talking about food in our classrooms. It's really important when we approach the topic of healthy eating in our classes, we create that physically and emotionally safe environment for our students when learning about these expectations, because a lot of the foods that our students are eating are out of their control because this is something that their parents or their families are purchasing, right? The second fundamental principle that I wanted to hone in on is ensuring that the curriculum expectations that we are teaching our students, whether it's elementary or secondary, is balanced, integrated, and connect to their real lives. So I'm going to share the mic with my colleague, Robin, because I really wanted to hear your experience from your rural community in terms of how you provide hands-on experiences with food to help students make those real-life connections in terms of what they're learning in their classrooms and in their own life. So Robin, can you share us your perspective?
So when I think about sort of the things that you're saying there, Andrea, I'm thinking a lot about Canada's Food Guide and sort of that other side of it, and sort of the habits and the things I think about specifically on this topic. It's more than just what I'm putting in my mouth, right? Like this is more than about what I eat. It's also about where I eat. It's about when I eat, why and how we eat. And so for me as a teacher, I think it's really, really important that my students see themselves in the lessons that I'm giving. And so I don't push too hard on something like, must eat these foods or have to eat at regular times. Some students, the reality in my area is that, some students might be fasting. Some girls might be taking part in their berry fast. So maybe they're not eating some of the foods that they might otherwise be. Alternatively, some students would choose not to eat all day if they're participating in Ramadan. So we try and be really respectful of that, but at the same time offer opportunities for shared eating. So I kind of think of it as like the same way I do shared reading or a shared math lesson, we also do shared food exploration. And so it's not so much about looking at eating these 5 foods. It's much more about, let's investigate food and let's see what this food is about. We're really lucky where I am that we have access to school gardens and we have access to a salad bar program. And so we're able to sort of harness the knowledge of our entire building and the expertise contained within our building to produce our own food. But again, I want to circle back to that whole notion of food neutrality. We have to have those food neutral practices where even when we're serving our salad bar, we're not forcing students to eat anything. They're putting their own food on their plate. Because again, it's about having that safe and caring environment where students feel that they have the ability when they're ready to try something new and they're investigating it, like Shaun said, with all 5 of their senses. And so for us at that kind of a level, I think a lot about like one resource that I've used a lot is the grade 3 healthy decision making unit contained within the H&PE OPHEA's resources. And it's all about local and cultural foods. And so I can sort of springboard from a lesson to sort of take it where the students want it to go. And it's that real student-centered learning at that point. And that's where the rich learning happens. Andrea, I wonder, like at the secondary level, like how do you do that?
So it's interesting. In the secondary level, the students come into the classroom with different conversations, different perceptions of things. They're heavily influenced still from home in terms of the different myths that they've heard about around certain foods and certain fad diets. So it's not uncommon for them to be curious about different types of diets because they've seen somebody at home trying to follow a certain diet plan or they've heard more about it. So I've actually created a couple of summative assignments that we use in the secondary level in phys ed around food fad diets and food myths. So the students would actually select a topic, so they can select any type of diet that they're interested in. And then the other assignment that they're doing is they're selecting a myth and sort of debunking the myth. And this sort of follows along with the OPHEA inquiry-based learning. And I believe that Andrea is going to put that slide up for us as well, in terms of just sort of it's a model that we follow along in terms of making these types of different assignments for the students. So we're looking for them to formulate a question. So is there a food myth that they've always like, you have to have 8 cups of water, or it's not good to eat before bed, or you're not supposed to, you're supposed to be doing certain types of food during certain types of the day or combining foods. Or if they're looking at a fad diet, they're looking at, if their mom or their aunt's on the keto diet or Mediterranean diet. So they're looking, the wheat belly. So they're looking at these different things and they're going to formulate questions that they want to ask. Now, usually what I'm trying to do is get them to make connections back to the current food guide. Look at Canada's food guide and where is the discrepancy with these things that we're examining. So they're going to gather and organize the information. And when they're gathering and organizing the information, they're looking at primary and secondary sources. So with primary and secondary sources in the secondary, in other courses that they're taking, maybe more so in social science and even in science, they start to learn the difference between primary and secondary sources. So this is an opportunity for them to do that, and also an opportunity to learn what's a credible source. So if they're examining one of the diets and all the information they're getting from the internet about that diet is from the author of the book, or directing them to buy certain types of food that goes with that diet, is that truly a credible source? So trying to get them to get their hands on things that are credible, that are scientific journals and articles that have been reviewing that diet or even looking at the myth. So then they're interpreting and analyzing the information that they've gathered, and then they're coming to their own conclusions with it as well. And when they come to their own conclusions, it's sort of like this aha moment. So like Robin said earlier on, Students aren't able to necessarily go out and do the grocery shopping for the family. But at this age, or at any age, they can influence, they can have discussions about things that they've discussed in class in terms of what are better choices to fuel not only their bodies, but everybody else at home as well, and for their enjoyment, right? And for their overall health. So we follow that. And then in terms of communicate, that last little piece that's on the diagram there that you circle through, we have a few different ways of communicating. So in COVID times now, we're at home and trying to deliver these lessons. We've resorted to doing infographics that they can do sort of poster online. If they're at school, they have that option, or they can create sort of an old school poster that's put up on the wall and they can have a discussion with the class. The other thing that we've explored the past year is doing a podcast. So some of the grade 12 students will create a podcast. And it was really interesting this past school year because one student, his mother used to be a dietitian and owns a local sort of a foods store in town. And he conducted an interview with her, and some other students did interviews with each other. And then we had a set of podcasts that they could all listen to. So it was a great way to get the information and communicate that information, and for them to also reflect on what they've learned about it. And again, making that connection back to the food guides, sort of grounding their decisions on that food guide. Another fun lesson that I've done with students in the past, and before I embark on something like this, they know that in my class that they're going to be exploring different types of food. So sometimes I'll bring in different types of fruits. So when we were able to sort of travel around, and I would stop at some different places, say in the Toronto area on my way back to Kingston, pick up different types of fruits that we wouldn't find in our local grocery stores here. But then one day, what I've done before, not one day, I've done several times, is I've made them cookies and I substitute some of the flour for cricket flour. Now, I'm well aware in advance of food allergies, and if anyone's a vegetarian or vegan, to make sure that I'm not crossing that line with them. And then I usually have a video that's playing talking about should we all be eating insects? So we talk about how other cultures, this is normal. They get over that ick factors and they want some more, they want more information. And we have a discussion about it being a sustainable protein source. So I want to make sure, like I said before, they're willing to learn, they're going to try new things. We have that discussion at the beginning of our nutrition unit so they can expect some of this so it's not a complete surprise. And then one last point that I want to bring up here as well is in terms of a previous webinar that we had with Kara Rosenblum, a registered dietitian, and we did one earlier on. She talked about having to be, as educators, we need to be aware of our weight biases. And I believe the link is going to be provided in the chat. And it is a weight bias test. So it's a Harvard weight bias test that only educators should be taking. So if you're secondary, I would not be sharing this with your students, but it's interesting to take it for yourself because you might not realize that you have a bias. And until we recognize that, sometimes we can't make that step forward in a positive manner with some of our students. I'm going to throw it to Shaun in terms of how it looks like in your school.
Hey, Shaun, if you don't mind me, I just wanted to interrupt. I thank you, Andrea, for sharing that experience at the secondary level. Shaun, before you start, we did have a question coming into the chat box, and I wanted to address this question because it does connect with what we are talking about. Is that okay, Shaun? Okay. So we have one of the participants who is asking in regards to their kindergarten learners. Their learners are currently investigating the benefit of nutritious foods instead of using healthy and not healthy, those terms. They're asking us, what do you suggest? This participant has seen every day or sometimes. How do you suggest we explain this? Robin, I know that you are in the primary level at the elementary panel. Robin, I was wondering if you can share your expertise on this question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to be really clear. Like, I'm not suggesting that all foods have, they're not everything we eat is inherently sort of healthy. But the reality is, because our learners don't have control over what's going into the cupboards and into the refrigerators, we want to be really careful about how we phrase it, because we don't want to initiate that dietary stigma or that dietary shame early in our kindergarten years. And so one of the ways we frame it is we talk about energy dense and we talk about nutrient dense foods. And that might be something you can do. But I would really encourage you. I mean, kindergarten students are also learning about their senses and all the different ways of sort of learning about the world. And I would let them lead the way. And I would suggest, have them explore food. What's the texture? What does it look like? What does it smell like? I mean, obviously with COVID, I often have done in the past like a tasting menu, and I'll get all dressed up and have a tuxedo shirt on and a cloth over my arm, and I serve the students all these different things for them to try, and I try and find things that they've never tried before. And so rather than focusing on sort of healthy and unhealthy, I want you to look at sort of what are the senses, what are the what are the things they can tell you about it based on what they can see and what they can touch and what they can smell. And, when COVID's done, what can they taste?
Thank you, Robin. And I think that what you said was total. It makes total sense, right? Like it's not just knowing the what of the food, but also everything that food brings to us, our senses, how we feel when we eat it, the textures and what it looks like. And one thing that I wanted to add with what you're saying and addressing the same question is always go back to the curriculum, right? What are the expectations saying? And we know that in the younger years, our students, our learners are learning about food for our healthy bodies and our healthy minds. So I go back to the language that Andrea touched on. What foods, when you're at school, is going to fuel my body and fuel my mind to be my best, right? And it's okay to eat those, quote unquote, sometimes foods, but when is the best time to eat those? And yes, it could be a celebration. It could be after school. It could be something when I'm hanging out with my friends. But when I'm at school and I'm learning and I need to be alert, it's really important to use that type of language so they understand it's not just, okay, I'm putting this in my mouth, but how does that connect to how I'm feeling and helping my body to grow? Shaun, I'm going to share the mic with you now because I know that you have a lot of experience at the whole school level. And I was wondering if you can share your experiences in regards to sharing resources and supports from your perspective.
Sure, thank you. So in my building, connecting healthy eating to the whole school community is one of our pillars for our foundation of healthy schools. In our intermediate division, students are expected to promote healthy eating habits in the school community, and I utilize the OPHEA Healthy School Certification Program as a vehicle to drive my instruction. My students are able to connect with community partners and educational stakeholders beyond the four walls of the classroom and really get the education in the hands of our parents and school community. Some of our past initiatives include a Rethink the Drink campaign, where students create bulletin boards and assembly presentations, as well as host parent information sessions about the hidden sugars found in popular beverage choices found in our school. They also present healthy alternatives, such as using fruit to flavor water. Our local health unit has played an integral part in planning and the promotion of the event, and this event can also be done virtually. Another successful event we've had in the past was a nutrient food fair. So if you think of your traditional science fair, think of that same concept in the gymnasium. However, we're showcasing nutrient-rich food, and we invite our whole school community to come down and visit. We have our primary learners asking all kinds of questions about the foods that are there. We have our junior students who come sometimes with a scavenger hunt looking for fiber-rich food or protein-rich food. And we also use it as a fundraiser. So we sell these healthy bites working in partnership with a dietitian to ensure our recipes are compliant with the school nutrition program. And we sort of make it in terms of a little competition where the dietitian will go around and hand out prizes to the intermediate students who created the most nutrient-rich dish. It's well-attended, well-received, and it connects the whole school community. Another initiative we talked about was Farmers in a Playground, where our primary students would connect with our local food co-op, and we'd have farmers come into our school community, create some raised vegetable gardens, and help grow some vegetables that we could use in our breakfast program. In addition to using the Healthy School Certification Program, I also use the Wallet Wellness Program, which is another program offered by OPHEA. And this program enables me to connect healthy eating and food and nutrition with math and language. It was especially a hit with my junior students this year as we talked about financial literacy for the first time. with that being said, I'm going to throw it back to Andrea.
Shaun, I really liked how you were sharing your healthy schools experience. We did have one question from our participants asking you to clarify the pillar that you were talking about when you first started talking and sharing your experience. I was wondering if you can share that.
Sure. So I talked about the pillar for a foundation for healthy schools.
So if you can scroll down, just talking to the participants right now, my colleague has shared a link in terms of the Healthy School Certification Program that OPHEA has. So if you can click that, it will bring you to what Shaun was just referring to. Okay. There was another question that came in, and I wanted to share this question with Andrea, Shaun, and also Robin. This participant was asking in regards to our expertise. She's currently teaching grade 5-6 split. Her students' lunches mainly consist of packaged snacks, okay? Kind of like what you were touching on, Robin. What kind of lesson can be taught to students to consider snacks that are not pre-packaged? So thinking about, in my head, the first thing that's jumping in is that what is in their control and what is not in control. Robin, Andrea, and Shaun, I'll let you share your experience with this.
I think, Andrea, you said it right there. What is in the student's control? If what is in their lunchbox is packaged food, that's probably what's available. That's not to say that that's all the school can offer, however. I certainly think that, and again, depending on where you are in the province, there are different partnerships depending on where you are. For example, where I am, we have the Northern Fruit and Vegetable Program that allows us to offer fruit and vegetables and things that student might not otherwise have access to. One of the huge bonuses that during COVID, it's something that we can still offer because it comes individually packaged. And certainly that is a lesson of science that we focus on in non-COVID times about minimizing packaging and stuff like that. But the reality of the situation is currently that this is sort of what we have to work with. And so this is what we do. And so I would say, like Andrea sort of mentioned, focus on what you can control. So if you're in a place where you don't have access to Northern Fruit and Vegetable, maybe you have access to a community partnership through your local health unit. I know some teachers that just keep a fruit bowl in the classroom. Sometimes it's about those students not having access to those things. And the reality is a 5-pound bag of carrots is a few dollars. A bag of apples is not much more than that. And when you can start to shift that cultural norm away from always depending on packaged foods and start, even if it's you as the teacher. I mean, we've talked about that modeled behavior, right? Where you as the teacher pick up the apple and offer one to another student. Of course, always being respectful of cultural practices. Of course, always being respectful of allergies. Of course, always being respectful of a student's right to say no, thank you. But I just think, having it visible and having different foods represented and setting the tone in your classroom. Certainly there are grants also out there, but relying on sort of what you've got access to and what's within control, starting with that as a foundation is where I would begin.
Thank you. And this jumps back to what the three of you were talking about in terms of knowing your learner and knowing your school community, right? And Robin, thank you for sharing. I wanted to jump off of that because in my school, I teach in a lower income community where 90% of the students do not have breakfast and do not have their lunches. So because we're categorized as one of those types of communities, we do have a lot of community engagement in terms of what Shaun was talking about, where we have the public health nurse working with me to write grants to get those, the funding coming in so that we can purchase those foods so that they are always available, right? So best practice is to connect with those community partnerships to see if you can tap into any of those funding. And if there is a need, I guarantee you that partnerships with those community organizations can support in terms of offering another choice within your classroom or within your school so that you can talk about that versus talking about what the students are bringing to school, which is most likely out of their control. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm scrolling down into the chat right now, and just a reminder for future questions, please use the Q&A Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. But I do want to answer this question. One participant has asked, how do you teach those children with learning disabilities who may not retain any of the information that you may be sharing? Example, a child who has been diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. So there's two pieces to this. If the child has a learning disability, an identified special education need, they should have an IEP. And if they have an individual education plan, there should be a program page for health education. So if there are learning needs for this specific student in terms of retaining information, and not just in learning information in healthy eating, there should be either an accommodated expectations or also accommodations for this student, and also possibly a modified expectations for these students. So my first advice, connect with the homeroom teacher if you happen to be the prep coverage teacher for health education, and also connect with their special education resource teacher to find out what the learning needs are before tapping into, okay, what do I need this child to learn? Because they probably need some support in that area. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to throw the next question to Andrea, because I know this is in your expertise. A question came in regards to what fruits and vegetables can you grow before schools are out in June?
So that's always an interesting one, because you're trying to maintain possibly a garden that students can benefit from, but you've only got till June, and then you're not back again until September. So some of the things, if you've got strawberries, so strawberry plants that were there before, you could possibly harvest those in June before the end of the school year, depending on the season. A lot of the different lettuces and kales, they actually, a lot of kale will do better in the colder season. And things like snow peas and sugar peas, snap peas, those need a trellis to grow up on, but they can handle a little bit of light frost. So those are all things that, just look at the packaging in terms of how many days you don't want. You can plant before May long weekend and be harvesting hopefully before the students go off for summer break. And then consider planting things over the summer that maybe needs less maintenance, or this is where the community partnership comes in. So what we've had in our community, in our area in Kingston, is some of the schools will have summer co-op students, and they will maintain some of these gardens at other schools over the summer. So then that way that the school, when they come back in September, they're going to have a harvest of tomatoes, and say we've got a cooking program in our school hospitality courses that some of the schools, what they'll do is they'll harvest the tomatoes, or they'll do like tomatillas that they can use for green salsa, because they're harvested a little bit later into October, and they learn how to can those and have that as part of their program. So taking a look and see in terms of the packaging, if you're growing things from seed, things like peppers and tomatoes, cucumbers, they need more heat, and they can go through the summer, but you need someone to be maintaining it. But there is, like I said, the lettuce, the kale, the peas, you can do that earlier on.
I also want to jump in there. I started this, and there are, again, grants that exist to support this, but venture into indoor gardening as well. Windowsills, tower gardens, aeroponic gardens. I mean, if you partner up with your science department or your science teacher in the school, there's lots of ways to keep this stuff growing sort of year round. Even if it's not enough to feed the entire building, it's enough to show that it can be done, and it's enough to ignite that spark for some of those students. And to speak to the special education question as well, it's one of the ways I can most engage those learners, because it's hands-on, it's experiential, and it's sensory rich. So it provides all the pieces of the programming for those special education students that they often need.
Thank you. And just to close off this theme before we go into the next one, the thing that keeps coming up is going back to the two fundamental principles that I mentioned at the beginning of this theme in regards to ensuring that our students are learning this health topic, specifically healthy eating, in a physically and emotionally safe environment. And as you said, Andrea and Robin and Shaun, that a lot of the things about food are out of our students' control. So what can we control as educators to ensure that what they are learning is balanced, interconnected, and relatable to their living environment and their home environment, right? I wanted to address one question that came into the comment in the chat box right now. And this participant was asking in regards to an eating disorder question, where how do they address eating disorder, sorry, for students in the intermediate years. Andrea, can I share this question with you in terms of you sharing your expertise from the older grades?
So I want to sort of step back a bit in terms of one of the earlier webinars with Kara, and she was saying the wording that we use, we need to be very careful because it starts at a young age, and Robin was even saying this as well. So why we want to get away from labeling as healthy and unhealthy foods is that when a kid wants that unhealthy food, right? They want that unhealthy, they want that treat, and we keep saying that it's unhealthy, it's not good for them, makes them actually internalize it and to start to feel bad about themselves. So that's sort of starting with the younger grades. At the secondary level, we've had some concerns, obviously, and some of the things that we've encountered is that we've had some students with some severe eating disorders that are being monitored by the hospital. So they're outpatient with a hospital program, and it's been quite eye-opening to see how severe some of these students can get that you're not even fully aware of. So part of the challenge comes into us not always knowing that our student is going through this, right? It's considered sort of a mental illness. And this is where I always struggle that, if you've got a diabetic, a type 1 diabetic with an insulin pump, you're fully aware, in terms of medical needs. But if you have somebody with a mental illness and with an eating disorder, we're not fully prepared for that. So we need to be careful in terms of the language that we use that we've been talking about and the assignments that we do. So when I do the fad diet assignment, I'm not looking for students to try the diet. Okay, I'm not asking them to count their calories. I'm not looking for them to assess what they've done and how much fat that they're eating. We need to go back in terms of modeling, right? That we're having nutrient dense and less nutrient dense and eating foods for enjoyment. But when we get to an eating disorder, it's another level, and we need to be really careful. And in our school, we have an adolescent care worker, a social worker within the building, and I can work with her around these things. And if I know I have a student in my class with an eating disorder, I will always check with her before I do certain lessons with nutrition, just to make sure that I'm not what I'm delivering and what we're talking about is not a trigger for that student, and maybe they need to be excused from certain things. But we're not covering off specifically what eating disorders are and what they look like anymore within the curriculum. I hope that helps a little bit.
Oh, thank you, Andrea. And the link that our colleague has put into the chat box in regards to Kara's webinar that you were referencing does have a lot of resources there. And once again, there are many organized community supports such as public health that can support in those more sensitive topic areas when addressing healthy eating. Okay. Before I jump into the next theme, there is something that came into the question and answer feature. And this particular participant is asking about working in a low-income school community. And they're asking us what tips would we give for having parents accepting food support. I'm not going to go into the details in terms of what the question was asking, but I think this connects to what Andrea, Robin, and Shaun was talking about in terms of our approach as educators and also representing the school community, right? Like I said, in my particular school, which is a lower income community, I do understand that when you are offering food support, such as monetary amounts and also food, it can get a bit touchy in regards to how the families will react when they know their child is receiving the food, or if the money or the food is given to their whole family. My best advice is to, number one, connect with your public health nurse that is designated for your school or family of schools. And number two, my particular school, and I'm going to share my experience here, is that we offer a universal program for all the students. So whether you do have money to buy those healthy foods for you during the school day and pack in the lunches, whether you don't, all the students are given the food no matter what. And once again, these programs are built in from day one in partnership with our public health nurse, so that the families know that whether they have money or they don't have money, or their kids are hungry in the morning, even after they eat breakfast, everyone gets it, so that it's not like, oh, okay, you're attending the breakfast program because you can't afford food. So once again, it's really important to understand how we approach it from a school community level and also in your classroom level. So hopefully that answers your question. We have 10 more minutes, and I just want to make sure we have enough time to jump into our last theme here. And this connects right back to what I was just talking about, a healthy relationship with food in regards to how our students see food, understand food, and also enjoyment. My colleague is going to share the Canada's Food Guide link in regards to building a healthy relationship with food and the importance of this, because it's really important to also teach students the benefits of enjoying our food and also how to enjoy the food. Okay. Robin, I'm going to throw the mic to you because I think you really have a great example from your school and classroom in regards to setting a positive habits in regards to healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it resonates so well with me, that question that came in, because I think when I hear that question, I think like normalize it, normalize it, normalize it. Everybody eats. And so this notion, where some students need the support and some students just enjoy it. When everybody eats together, it's not othering. It's part of the experience, and it builds that community and it builds that cultural piece. And so I try and really involve my students. I get them prepared in the involvement of preparing it. I get them telling me, what are we going to have? What are we going to serve? In my school with our salad bar program, every class participates in setting the menus. They sort of have that ownership over, this is what this week's salad is, and this is how we're going to share this with the school. And they market it, basically. They do posters, and they have announcements, and they facts about the place where this food might come from. And in doing so, not only do students see themselves and their own personal cultures represented within the foods that we're serving, but other students are getting that chance, like I've talked about, to sort of investigate food and learn about food. Now, I do want to speak to the fact, COVID means that we're eating prepackaged foods a lot more in schools. We're not having access to the same sort of eating together. But that's not to say it's impossible. And so I think whenever there's that roadblock, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to diverge, to do something different. This year, for example, one of the partnerships we developed was with a local company that makes docks. And rather than make docks, they use some of their scraps to build picnic tables for us. And so we had COVID-friendly picnics in the fall. And students ate outside well into November so that they could take off their masks and eat together. And that's with their teachers. Not all schools, of course, have the amount of green space that is required for the entire building to be outside at once. But balancing when you're outside and what you're doing outside with other teachers mean that there are opportunities to sort of eat as a school community. Not only that, but I think too, when you can put students in a place where they have ownership over what's going on around food, they tend to have more invested in it. And so if I offer a student a salad, they might say no. But when that student has decided what's going into the salad, they've prepared the vegetables to go into the salad, and they've served themselves the salad, providing those opportunities for students to investigate that and have those rich, sensory-rich, and experiential learning opportunities means that all of my students, regardless of skill level or ability, have the opportunity to take that and have that learning. Now, of course, that's the elementary level. So, Andrea, Barrow, secondary, what's your perspective on that one?
So it's, again, with COVID, it's been a little bit more of a challenge with us as well. So usually pre-COVID, it would be lunch break, everybody would be in the cafeteria, some kids would leave, they'd be out in the parking lot. But now in our school board, we're doing things a little bit differently. So we've had octomesters. So what that means is that you have one set of students, one class, every day for 4.5 weeks. So you can imagine all day phys ed, sort of like a sports camp, fitness camp sometimes, but they're together all day. So all classes. And then when they're having, our cafeteria is closed. So we're not gathering in the cafeteria. So students are expected to eat lunch in their classroom, or to go outside, or some of them can go home because some of them live in close proximity. So what's happened with COVID is that we're finding groups of students eating together that would not normally socialize together. And this also sort of falls under the living skills in terms of making healthy choices, healthy relationships. So I'm hoping that will continue on post-COVID as well, that you're going to get different groups of students, because usually what happens is all the teachers lock their classrooms, students go to the cafeteria, we go into our own staff room, kids eat cafeteria outside. So now all the classrooms are unlocked, so students have a safe place to eat, and they're eating together and to building those relationships. The other thing that I allow students to do as well is to eat throughout the day. So at any point in time, they can grab their snack, they can eat, they can have a drink of water or whatever that they have packed. They can eat throughout the day. I want them to listen to the cues of their body of when they're hungry and eat when they're hungry, and not just save it for lunchtime or save it for a break or save it for the end of the day. So I'm always encouraging, have your food out, snack through the day. That's completely fine. But with the current stay-at-home order, things have changed up a little bit. And one good thing is that students are having meals with their family. So parents are working from home, they're working from home. So it's the healthy habits that we see in the other side we've mentioned before of the food guide, in terms of being mindful of who you're eating with, right? So at school, but now at home. The other aspect that I'm hearing from kids, though, too, is sometimes that it's difficult because there's been some good baking going on at home and the ingredients that are going in. So conversations about, this is where students can influence what is being bought and being brought into the house. I haven't heard of anybody mention that they went out and told their parents to get cricket flour, because it is available at Loblaws, to include it in. But, just giving them different opportunities to influence what goes in to the baking and what's on the table as well. Shaun, how does this look at the intermediate level for you?
Well, for me, I want to make sure the conversation never stops. I want to take the conversation outside of the four walls of the classroom in your traditional health class. I want to engage in my students during nutrition breaks. I take advantage of my duty schedule as well in elementary, where I can engage in conversations about food with other learners. Me being a French immersion teacher in a dual track school, oftentimes the English students are amazed that I can speak good English and they can understand me, even though I might roll my R's once in a while. But engaging in those conversations, because if we're going to empower our students to make informed decisions about food, we need to keep the conversation going, not only in the traditional health class, but by making those cross-curricular connections, modeling good food habits, and engaging our students in conversations about food.
Thank you. No, it's really nice to hear that even though all three of you are from different school communities in Ontario, and also different levels in teaching, that the health concepts, health choices are all interconnected to ensure that what the students are learning in the curriculum is connected to their real life, and the opportunities are given at school for all your students. I'm going to share my slide quickly before I wrap up. And this resource, thumbs up if you see it. Okay. And I think Robin was mentioning this before, OPHEA, Ideas for Action, and the link is going to be in the chat box. This resource was created, activity-based resource was created to support leaders of all ages, elementary and secondary, when planning the implementation of activities to support health and well-being for students, staff, and the community. And we all mentioned a lot of examples that we are currently doing in our own school communities that help bring the learning to life, right? I'm going to highlight the healthy eating section because that's what we are talking about. And I'm going to draw your attention to the connected to the community activities. This section here, I'm going to share with you, and you can check that out on your own time. Many activities here that you can embed into your school community so that the students can see, okay, this is what I'm learning in health class, and this is what it really looks like at the school level. All connected, and you'll see a big aha, right? And it's like the example that Andrea was sharing with her cricket flour, and being able to empower our students to make those choices and influence them in the parameters that are in control. Okay. So thank you so much. I just wanted to let all the participants know there are food literacy lesson plans coming available to you. Please stay connected by signing up for the e-connection to find out when they are available, and that link will be in the chat box. And please follow us on social media. If that's how you came to this webinar, awesome, at OPHEA Canada. Stay tuned, as we will also be sharing the recap blog and recording from this webinar with you in mid-June. We also are going to share share a link for the survey for this session. Please take a moment to fill out the survey on today's webinar, as all that feedback will be valuable for us. And thank you, Shaun. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much for providing your expertise and your energy to us today. And to all the participants, I know that this was probably a long day of work, and you dedicated your time to join us in the learning today. But awesome. Like, I love the attendance, love the engagement in regards to the questions. And we hope that everyone has an awesome evening. Put your feet up, but hopefully you got some awesome links from us shared today and examples of how we bring healthy eating to life and food literacy skills for all of our learners in our school communities.